Concerning Jessica and her subs and her members, who were all in her chat that day, who made comments, I will be addressing many of them, directly and indirectly. Before anybody tries to put a spin on this to make it look like I'm trying to attack Jessica and her subs, that couldn't be further from the truth. In fact, I'm only doing this video and using the information that's out there in comparison to what was said in her live stream. This video is not about dragging anybody. In fact, it's about empowering people with knowledge. Yes, it's true, God gave us all free will. He gave us the freedom to choose pro-choice and the freedom to choose pro-life. And as a pastor, it would be irresponsible of me not to address this topic of abortion concerning the unborn children. My brother in Christ, Doug, Mr. Predicto, will be doing some narration as well as reading some Bible quotes in this video. If this video brings anybody to anger, please direct your anger towards me and not Doug. Doug only volunteered to do some narration for me as well as read some Bible quotes. That's it. Now, Doug may very well agree with me concerning this video, but if you want to know Doug's opinion on abortion, you'll have to go over to his channel and check out his video on this very subject.
You can run on for a long time, run on for a long time, run on for a long time. Sooner or later, gotta cut you down. Sooner or later, gotta cut you down. Go and tell that long-tongued liar. Go and tell that midnight rider. Tell the rambler, the gambler, the backbiter. Tell him that God's gonna cut him down. Tell him that God.
Now, this one lady says, was it wrong for me to have a procedure? She uses the word procedure to basically have the baby removed because she was pregnant in the tubes. Well, ma'am, if you're pregnant in the tubes, neither the baby and you will survive. Both people will end up, Now, this person said abortion is not a sin. Based on what grounds? According to the scriptures, it says clearly, you shall not kill, right? Now, your argument is, well, it's not a baby yet, it's not full term, look, those lies are just hogwash. And even to the point of fertilization, science also all agree that that is when life begins. Now, in the scriptures, let's talk about child sacrifice, through abortion even. Well, first, let's hear Doug do some narration while he reads scripture concerning the topic Moloch, who was a god who was worshipped by the early people, and they were sacrificing their children.
Leviticus chapter 20, verse 2 through 5 states, "Say to the Israelites, any Israelite or any foreigner residing in Israel who sacrifices any of his children to Moloch is to be put to death. The members of the community are to stone him. I myself will set my face against him and will cut him off from his people. For by sacrificing his children to Moloch, he has defiled my sanctuary and profaned my holy name. If the members of the community close their eyes when that man sacrifices one of his children to Moloch, and if they fail to put him to death, I myself will set my face against him and his family, and will cut them off from their people together with all who follow him in prostituting themselves to Moloch." Leviticus chapter 18, verse 21 states, "Do not give any of your children to be sacrificed to Moloch, for you must not profane the name of your God. I am the Lord." Leviticus chapter 20, verse 3 states, "I myself will set my face against him and will cut him off from his people. For by sacrificing his children to Moloch, he has defiled my sanctuary and profaned my holy name. Deuteronomy chapter 12, verse 31 states, "You must not worship the Lord your God in their way, because in worshiping their gods, they do all kinds of detestable things the Lord hates. They even burn their sons and daughters in the fire as sacrifices to their gods."
What was happening in those days? God was very angry, killing their children to the Moloch god, okay? And by the way, that Moloch god is also many gods throughout history. It's the same god with a different mask. The god Moloch is also the god Baal. And people sacrificed their children to these. And how did they do it? They made a statue out of bronze, that sort of thing, and heated it up very hot. And as Moloch had his arms hanging out like this, the flames in the fire made his arms red hot. So what the people would do, they lay their baby onto the arms of Moloch. And to hide out the cries and the screams of the babies, a group of men would beat the drums to cancel out the sound of the young baby screaming, so it would be less on the mother to hear. God was so furious, he wiped out those people that were participating in such a thing. Now, by the way, it wasn't necessarily the parents that laid the child into the arms of Moloch, those fiery hot arms. In most cases, it would have been a priest. And we know this through scripture as well. So they were giving up their child in sacrifice to their God, and usually a priest would intervene and actually lay the baby in the arms. But the point is, can you imagine the screams of those children? To the point where people had to beat drums to quiet out the voices of the screaming child, so everybody in the community didn't have to do this so much? Wow. Women today are still sacrificing their babies to some form of sacrifice reasons. For example, well, if a woman has a child aborted, it was sacrificed because of her career. She sacrificed her baby because she's in poverty. She sacrificed her baby because she didn't finish college and university, those sorts of things. People are still sacrificing their children, not necessarily to Moloch in particular, but the way Satan would see it, any kind of sacrifice he would contribute unto himself. He loves people when they abort their babies and kills their children in that way. He loves it. And Satan will even relish in those moments. So in actual fact, he will probably call it his sacrifice. She's actually sacrificing it for many different reasons. If you choose education over the child, you sacrifice the child for your education. And if you believe that it's going to interfere with your career, or you don't have enough money to bring a child into the world, you sacrifice them for that reason. So no matter how you look at it, people today are still doing the same thing in a little different way as they did when they sacrificed their children to Moloch. A sacrifice is a sacrifice. Did you know that there's satanic organizations that call themselves Satanists that actually have their own organization where they reach out to women or have open lines and those sorts of things that women can contact them and abort their child through their organization? What? That is an actual truth. Here it is. So these organizations saying, look, if you're going to have an abortion, do it through us. So they can claim it in the name of Satan. That you aborted your child, and they can offer that up to Lucifer, Satan, whatever. These organizations under the satanic banner are literally sacrificing your child through their god, Lucifer. I mean, who would have ever thought it came to the point where a satanic organization or a Satanist group would decide, you know what we're going to do? We're going to open up channels to give women the opportunity to have abortions, but have them through our organization. So that way we can claim that sacrifice unto our god, Satan. That's exactly what's going on here. And many Satanists have actually admitted to this. They're still even sacrificing to Lucifer through their organization by aborting children. Insane. I mean, we always hear the argument from the left that if a child isn't inside the mother's womb, it's not viable anyhow. So in other words, it totally depends on the mother. Of course it does. In fact, the baby will be very viable if it remains in the mother's womb. It's when you remove it, it is no longer viable. Just for an example, look at Pfizer, okay? The COVID thing. They made $37 billion just from America and Canada alone, giving out the COVID vaccinations. And now we find out that it's almost equal to a bad flu. I mean, look at Pfizer, the lies, the masking, the terror they sent through the communities. Yes, people died from it. But people die every year from a flu, common cold, that sort of thing. It happens. Well, why did they drive it down the throats of everybody, put them in a mass panic? And everybody went, and in fact, the government even forced people to get the immunity shot by taking away their jobs, or the threat of taking away their job, that sort of thing. You know what I'm talking about. We all heard it, right? So anyways, Pfizer made $37 billion. That's not even counting the other immunity companies out there that was building vaccines and that sort of thing and putting it out there to be purchased by the government for the people. That is a fact. Now, times that by a global amount of money, it's in probably the trillions. I don't know for sure, but I do know that if they're going to make $37 billion just off the vaccines here in Canada and America, how much did they make worldwide? Wow. So Parent Planhood is a business. Why don't we take the money that we give Parent Planhood and take that money and give $20 or $30 or $40,000 to every woman who is pregnant, and we pay for their nutrition, we take care of them, and we let them go all the way to the 9 months until they have a baby, and we put the baby up for adoption. Now, before anybody says, yeah, but adoption is cruel, nobody actually adopts, and the kids end up in foster care. I heard Granny mention that.
There's adoption. I don't care what led it. I don't care what trauma will do to you. Hell, I don't even care if you'll live.
Facts. More women die at a much higher rate from complications due to abortion than during any stage of pregnancy. Those are the facts.
You better carry that baby to full term. Give it up to. How do you think these children in adoption homes are living good lives?
Many children are living great lives in foster care. Not all situations are the same. Many children brought up through foster care are very successful, and many of them who in turn, once turning adults themselves, have adopted children of their own.
Really? The overflowing foster care system?
I've heard that argument that Granny made by many different people. What about children in foster care? What a miserable life they must live. But is that true? I know many children that went through the foster care program who excelled, prospered, are happy, and joyful. I know several of them who are now in college, some are in university, as well as I know several who have a family of their own. But let's take this a little further. Based on Granny's argument about children in foster care having a miserable life, is that a reason to terminate a baby because that baby may or may not end up in a foster care and be sad or miserable? And in principle, with that argument, what about children who are born with disabilities, who have long-term life disabilities, who will never recover and will be forever in wheelchairs? Are we to terminate them too? What about old people with Alzheimer's, dementia, terminal illness, who are sad of all stages of life? Should we terminate them as well? The point is, where do we start and where does it end? No matter somebody's situation in life, their life matters. Did you know that there's 2 million families looking to adopt annually every year, while there are approximately 1 million abortions every year? Do the math. There are twice the number of families per abortions. There's 2 million people every year on the list right now looking to adopt a baby, and there's only 1 million abortions performed yearly. Add up the numbers, guys. There's enough families out there to take care of all the children that were purposed for abortion. It shouldn't be a mathematical issue. So all the money that we put into Parent Planhood and all these other abortion organizations and that, why don't we take the money, pay the women to go full term and give their child to adoption? It's certainly better than slaughtering a baby in a woman's womb, don't you agree? We could do that. We certainly could. We could legislate all that stuff to make sure that women are receiving an appropriate amount of money for their troubles. I mean, I realize a lot of women would disagree with that. Well, Pastor, you don't have to carry the baby for 9 months. Well, ma'am, I would have took extra precautions to make sure I didn't get pregnant. And if that's you, ma'am, talking to me, I'm going to talk straight back at you and say, look, there's consequences for sex. We all know this, whether you're on birth control, men are using contraceptives, all that stuff. There's still a chance for a woman to get pregnant during intercourse. That is a fact. So the responsibility mostly lays on a woman in that sense, because she's the one who's going to be receiving the man's seed. Now, of course, condoms break, but did you know that 7% of all condoms break? But at the same time, it's like 2% that result in a pregnancy because of the break? And yes, like I already talked about birth control. Now, I'm all for birth control, but not the morning after pill or those sorts of things, because that in fact could be actual an abortion. I'm only about the pre stuff before it gets even to the point of even an egg being fertilized. That's the birth control that I support. Now, of course, I have sympathy for the girl who's 17 or 16 or 14 or 13 or 12 who end up getting pregnant by, messing around. I have sympathy for these people, but I also have more sympathy for the innocent child that is going to be butchered and slaughtered inside of a mother's womb. And that's the argument. I mean, look, women have a responsibility to be educated enough to know that intercourse on any level has the potential of bringing forth a pregnancy. I believe in being abstinent, okay? That's what I truly believe. I believe that you should wait till you get married, all that, right? People say, well, Pastor, it's 2024, get with the times. Well, God's moral truth and God's moral law doesn't change by the year or by the age we're in. It's the same moral law as yesterday, today, and tomorrow. So the law of the Lord and the moral truth does not change because you feel more free in your life to do whatever you feel you want to do. I mean, I'm trying to be a little relaxed in this video. I understand the topic is terrible and a lot of people don't talk about it, don't want to talk about it, or they pick a side with so much vigor and energy towards the other side. I get that, guys. I'm not a stupid man. I've been in the ministry a long time, and I talked to many women who had abortions or talked them out of abortions, and I've seen the end result of the abortion. And I've also witnessed women and the causes of depression based on an abortion they had many years ago. Now, some women have no problem with abortion. It's no different to them by like rubbing two hands together. But at the end of the day, these women for some reason don't have a conscience or a heart for that matter. Women are supposed to be the nurturers of our children. When we start killing off our own children and our own lifeline and everything else involved with having children, when we start exterminating that process, what kind of society have we become? Ask yourself, am I right or am I wrong? And also, here are some cold-hearted facts. Some really deep, crazy truths. If a woman who is pregnant gets murdered by a man, and she's less than even 2 weeks pregnant, and they see that during an autopsy, and they find out that this woman actually had a fertilized egg, or as some would say, just a clump of cells, that man will be charged with double homicide. That's a fact, and here's the law. So, if a woman decides to go to an abortion clinic and have an abortion, there's no consequences for that. So the baby has no meaning then. But if a woman is pregnant at the lowest level of pregnancy and a man took the woman's life, he will also be charged for the murder of the baby. Think about it. And hypothetically speaking, just say the woman gets murdered on a Saturday and she had it all planned for Monday, appointment made and everything, to go down Monday and have her abortion. But she happens to be murdered on a Saturday, basically 2 days before the appointment. That man, despite only being 2 days to her appointment, would still be charged with double homicide. And those are the facts. And of course, if a man has no say in what a woman does with her body, as women like to argue, and she says to the man, I'm having an abortion. And even if the man is begging and praying and on his knees asking her not to get an abortion, she has every right to have one, right? Well, if she decides to go full term with the baby, now that man has to pay child support until the baby's 18 and sometimes longer, depending on schooling, college, all those sorts of things. The point being is, if a man has no say in whether a woman keeps the child or not, and the woman decides to keep the child, he's on the hook until the child is an adult. And even if the man doesn't want the baby and argues for her to have an abortion, and she decides not to, he's on the hook still. Why is the baby recognized as a human being by the government and the laws of the land? But if a woman chooses to abort, those laws no longer apply. It's a life when a woman says it's life, and it's not life if a woman says it isn't. That doesn't make sense to me, and it certainly shouldn't make sense to anybody else. I'm of the opinion, and I have facts to back it up, which we're going to talk about the biology, all those sorts of things, that a child is a human being, no matter at what point of conception, whether it's first, second, third trimester, right up to the day it's born. That child is a human being. You say cluster of cells, I say a cluster of life. Now this is very interesting as well. Did you know a woman that aborts her child, that the cells of the baby and the mother that mixed, and they share the cells? So that part of the baby, despite it being aborted, there's a part of that baby in the form of cells, that sort of thing, that remains with the mother. So the child's DNA, the child's blood cells, those sorts of things remain within a woman despite she has an abortion or not. I just thought that was also a very interesting fact. Now let's talk a little bit about biology and at what time does a baby become a baby or not. This is going to be very interesting. I'm about to show you a video of a woman's egg just getting fertilized with a sperm cell. And as soon as the sperm touches the egg, there's a flash of light. And it sets up a zone of electricity that prevents other sperm cells from penetrating that egg. Only one sperm cell per egg, and that's an actual fact. Now people are mistaken with twins. They think that two sperm cells break through. When it comes to twins, it's either that cell splits, then you have twins, or two eggs are fertilized at the exact same time by two separate sperms. A lot of people are uneducated and think that, you know, 2 or 3 sperm cells hit the egg and they all get inside and now you got triplets. But that's not the way it actually works through biology whatsoever. In fact, that field, that force field sets up and it's like the Lord says, let there be light, and there was. And the same thing, that as soon as the sperm cell touches that egg, boom, there's a flash of light and there's like an invisible force field that surrounds the egg that prevents any other sperm cells from entering in. Have a look.
Video is under a special microscope. It's an egg and showing the moment of conception. The moment the sperm enters the egg, there is now documented source of light that enters the egg. The moment of conception, the very moment that the sperm enters the egg, there is a flash of light, and the light has entered the world.
So this is the documented moment of conception. And the sperm enters the egg and there's this poof of light that comes off of it. Scientists are studying this and they're looking at it and they're like, okay, well, it looks like it's a release of zinc, a burst of zinc that comes off the egg. They can't explain away that light happens when life happens. Is that amazing? Light happens when life happens.
God formed you in your mother's womb. There is a reason that you are here today.
My argument is, just like the Lord said, let there be light, that egg also, there's that flash of light that happens. What is? Scientists don't even know why. Now they know it's a buildup of zinc that's released at that very moment to protect the egg and to prevent other intruders from getting in. But they don't know what that whole light thing is about. It's very interesting that God says, let there be light, and there was. Well, life is light. And at that very moment of conception, you'll see that flash. It's very impressive.
Poof of light that comes off of it. Scientists are studying this and they're looking at it and they're like, okay, well, it looks like it's a release of zinc, a burst of zinc that comes off the egg and it creates this appearance. But any way you slice it, they can't explain away that light happens when life happens.
As you can see clearly, there was a flash of light, and at that moment, that's when God put his finger right on that egg. Wow.
Sooner or later, gotta cut you down. Sooner or later, gotta cut you down. Go and tell that long-tongued liar. Go and tell that midnight rider. Tell the rambler, the gambler, the backbiter.